I started my first full-time job with $90,000 in student loans. Add on another $4K of car debt and $6K in medical debt, and we're off to a great start. This honestly sent me spiraling, but more of a productive spiral. I started binge reading the r/personal finance subreddit, listening to podcasts every day, and really learning as much as I could so I wouldn't be totally screwed forever. These are the 5 things that made the biggest difference. Starting off with number 1, manually tracking every penny spent. Now I know you probably heard this 100 times, but it's for a good reason. I tried so many apps and automated ways of tracking, but it never gave me the fraction of the accountability that manually tracking gave me. And I'm going on 7 years of tracking every transaction, everything I spent, saved, invested, put towards debt. And my best advice is just build it into your routine. You don't think twice about brushing your teeth because you know dental health is important, or washing your face because you know skincare is important, or having a cup of coffee in the morning because you know your sanity is important. So with your cup of coffee, sit down for 30 seconds and log your transactions from the day before, because your financial health is just as important. And I know it sounds weird, but once you start tracking, it actually becomes so fun. I even spent hundreds of hours creating my own annual budget planner. So now with my morning cup of coffee, I'll sit down, pop in all of my transactions, monitor my progress for the month with my budget, all in about 30 seconds, and I actually look forward to it. A lot of people recommend sitting down once a week and putting in all your transactions, which is totally fine in personal preference. But I find every day that passes that I don't sit down and track my transactions, it gets easier and easier to just forget about it or put it off, or just get overwhelmed knowing how much you have to enter. So I found just making it part of my daily routine actually helps me spend less time on it. And I never get into that mindset of dreading entering my transactions because I'll only have like 1 or 2 to do. But also daily tracking for me helps me think about my purchases a little bit more. Like when I'm out and I spend money, in the back of my head, I'm like, I'm gonna have to log this, and it helps provide some kind of psychological friction where it's just not as easy to spend frivolously. You know that you have to be held accountable to entering your transactions, and you just are ultimately creating more work. So find a method of tracking that works best for your brain, whether it be your notes app in your phone, pen and paper, a spreadsheet. The best method is the one that you stick to. Now on to number 2, refinancing high interest debt. Thank you. I graduated with Sallie Mae loans at 10-11% interest rate and was paying almost $400 a month to interest alone. Once I discovered student loan refinancing, there was really no stopping me. I refinanced those Sallie Mae loans 6 or 7 times, and now they're at 2.67% interest rate. Student loan refinancing is free, there are no fees, and checking your rate is a soft credit pull, meaning it doesn't show up on your credit report. So there's no downside to at least checking with a bunch of the top lenders to see if you would qualify for a lower interest rate. Now, if you go through with the refinancing and you submit to get approved for a loan, that is a hard credit pull. But I've noticed whenever I refinance, my credit score only goes down like 2 or 3 points. And then a couple months later, it bounces back. So I'm not really worried about that. But if you are planning a big purchase like a house, I would keep that in mind before refinancing. I also don't recommend refinancing federal loans because those have a lot of protections, including income-driven repayment. If you qualify for forgiveness, you would lose all of that if you refinanced into private. So keep that in mind as well. And when trying to find lenders to check my rate with, I honestly just go onto NerdWallet and see all of the top lenders. I try to check my rate with at least 5 every single time, just to make sure I'm always getting the lowest rate. And I do this about every 6 months. So I figure every 6 months, there might be changes in the market, or maybe I paid down a significant amount of debt, or maybe my income has increased. So I feel like every 6 months, there could possibly be a change in the rates. And it's just worth checking. It takes like a couple minutes. And also don't forget, you can refinance with the exact same lender you currently have. For example, my Sallie Mae loans, I refinance with Earnest, and I refinance with Earnest every 6 months, like 6 or 7 times. But they do often have limitations where you have to hold the loan for a certain amount of time. For Earnest, it was 6 months. So as soon as I hit 6 months, I checked my rate and it just happened to be lower, so I would refinance. This has easily saved me tens of thousands of dollars in interest and allowed me to do number 3, which is invest instead of paying off low interest debt. Now I know this one is controversial and I'm going to get hate comments from a certain demographic, but once I reduce my interest rate below 4%, I just pay the minimum payments and not a penny more. I know, crazy. I still have $60,000 of student loan debt, but at this point, paying off my debt doesn't increase my wealth, investing does. The stock market has returned an average of 10% annually for the last almost century. And while past performance can't predict future returns, I feel pretty comfortable with it, especially since I'm younger and I won't actually need this money for decades. So if it happens that there's a crash, I can just wait it out, and historically it goes back up. So if you think about it, putting money towards my debt is getting a guaranteed return of less than 4% interest, whereas investing can get me 10% interest. That's a bet I'm willing to make, and it's paid off exponentially so far. Once I removed the emotion and the shame around debt, I was able to make a more logical, data-driven decision. The reason certain people are so against debt is that they really think no one has any form of self-control, and that everyone has incredible amounts of shame around debt, that they want to get rid of it as soon as possible, which for some people is true. Maybe you can't be trusted to invest the money you would put towards debt instead, or if you had $60,000 of debt, it would keep you up at night. But I think it is somewhat of a self-fulfilling prophecy. We hear so much about how bad debt is, but I think this messaging around debt just kind of creates this shame spiral, especially with overspending. It's kind of like if you start a diet and you break your rule, you'll think, what the hell, I'll just keep eating whatever I want. It ends up being the same thing for money. When you're constantly being shamed for your overspending, you break a rule, you overspend. It's this counter-regulatory spending where you think, I already messed up, I might as well keep spending money. But ultimately, I think this messaging around debt leads people to make poor financial decisions in the name of being debt-free at all costs, even if the debt in question is 2% interest. Now you might be saying, that's great and all, but I don't have extra money to pay towards debt or invest. Which brings me to my fourth thing that helped me reach 100K net worth, increasing my 9-to-5 income and side hustles. I do believe you need a strong financial foundation no matter what your income is, but let's be honest, money does solve a lot of problems. And since I graduated with significantly more debt than my annual starting salary, I knew increasing my income was really my only option. I decided job hopping was probably going to be the easiest way for me. So I was constantly applying, interviewing, and every year or two, I would get a new job, which also meant another starting bonus, and that would go straight to my debt. I also got multiple certificates in my industry and a master's degree along the way. All of this brought me to a 6-figure salary, and I'm so grateful for it. I think the biggest factor for me was, I'll call, confident delusion. I would see other people earning 6 figures, and I was like, they're not that much different than me. I can do that too. But also side hustles played a huge role. I was constantly looking for different ways to earn money. I was a pet sitter on Rover. I did bank account, credit card churning, content creation. Nothing was above or below me. Money is money and a job is a job. But there's also only so much time you have in a day, so it's super important to focus on the things that have the highest ROI. I mean, you could spread yourself thin trying to make money in 10 different ways. But I think it's important to try to figure out what will make you the most money with the least time spent. For me, that was increasing my 9-to-5 income and focusing on content creation as a side hustle. Even though I spend just as much time on content creation as my full-time job, it also doubles as my hobby and I really love to do it. So I think the time is well worth it. But with increasing my income, I really needed a way to stay focused, which brings me to number 5, creating financial goals that keep me motivated and excited. I track my income and expenses for the entire year so I can make sure I'm setting realistic and attainable money goals for myself. I also love setting smaller monthly or quarterly goals or challenges. I'm currently doing a no buy quarter to help me reach my investment goals, but I've also done a no restaurant month, a no new clothes month, a no new books month. Whatever your problem spending area is, try doing a low or no buy month for that. If DoorDash is the issue, try doing a no DoorDash month, but still allowing yourself to go out to a restaurant once a week. It's less about full restriction and more just practicing having better habits slowly over time. I found gamifying my finances really helps me stay engaged and excited to make progress, and accomplishing a goal, no matter how small, really helps you build confidence in yourself and with your finances and makes reaching the next goal not seem as scary. So to recap, manually track every dollar spent, refinancing high interest debt, investing instead of paying off low interest debt, increasing my 9-to-5 income and doing side hustles, and creating financial goals to keep me motivated and excited brought me out of honestly a really scary place with my finances. And I found myself on this other side where I now feel so much more confident and optimistic about the future. Make sure to check out my no buy quarter video and my 2025 financial goals if you're needing some motivation for yourself. Thank you so much for watching, and make sure to subscribe so I can see you in the next one.